So, Humphrey, how are you liking that new microphone?
That's fine. It's a sexy piece of machinery.
It is, isn't it? And I bet you sound really nice now, too.
So, well, I was always hoping that the bad quality masks, my awful voice.
And now everyone gets to hear your awful voice.
Yep. Oh, well. Hello and welcome to Hardcast, where you can join us on a trip to Big Rock Candy Mountain. I'm Humphrey Erm.
And I'm Christian Claus.
Lifeline. Give me the Delinquents. All right, Chris. So the two funny books of Valiant, what's called, do a crossover.
They do indeed.
What do you think? Did it bring out the best in both, or?
You know what? Yes, it did.
Oh, yeah?
Oh, yeah. Are you surprised that I liked it?
So, yes, very, considering, you're not too fond of Quantum and Woody.
I actually really loved this comic.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
I
was
liked it
actually
too, but...
Yeah, no. I was like really invested in it. I was actually, I was reading it this morning, and I don't know, I just got like really into it. I was like, oh my God, I'm like, actually, like, I want to see what happens. And I love these characters, and I just want to see more and more and more. This was really fun. And, I know we usually do this in the end, but can we please talk about the art like right now?
Yeah, sure.
Because holy crap, was this awesome.
Nice.
Like, I mean, it's so cinematic, and that that part, like somewhere in the first couple of pages, they had this whole thing like I don't know. It was. I'm trying to get to it now.
What, the history of the map, or?
No. No, from a technique point of view, I love how throughout the entire comic they had this kind of idea of cutting up pictures with panels, but it still being one picture.
Yeah.
I was blown away by this technique. I mean, again, this might be something that for you and other comic book readers or whatever, it's just totally normal. And it's oh yeah, this is just a technique that people use. But this, I think, is the first time I've actually seen this used. And I was just blown away with how well it works and how it conveys motion and location, and it just felt so good. And then on page 11 of the PDF that we have, when the credits rolled, how awesome is that? I was looking at this and I was smiling because I was just so impressed with how they did this. And I don't know, I mean, it felt so good. I mean, especially the way that, then they had the hobo symbols for each character, and then also for the writer and the producer and all that kind of stuff. It was so perfect. And I really want to especially go into, on page 13, when Miss, what's her name, Evil Face, comes to the farm.
So, yeah.
I believe that from the second panel onwards, that whole row there where she gets out of her car, walks over to the barn, and knocks on the door, I don't think that would have been a normal thing to have in comics. And it feels so cinematic. This feels like Breaking Bad level of slow pacing. And again, in this, I just love the framing of these pictures. The way that the back of the car and the front of the car and the middle of the car kind of all link up, but it's a close-up on the
middle one,
car. Yeah, because you see her getting up, and the way she's walking over to the house, which again is kind of cut perfectly, and then she gets to the door, and it's just, I got so excited about this. It was amazing just looking at this, going this is a whole, I mean, again, this is probably something that's so used to everyone, but for me, it was this is a whole new level of picture storytelling, of comic book storytelling. And it just amazed me. And it wasn't only that this was a gimmick that happened once here. It happened again a couple issues later when they were in that house. And let me get the name straight. Armstrong and Quantum. Yeah, when they were coming back in from their fight, when they fell down the thing. They did that again. And I was yes, good. That's not a gimmick. It's just something that they use. And I don't know. It was so great. Did you say that this was some sort of veteran that did this comic? Or was that the other comic that we were going to read?
So, not sure. I can't remember mentioning something like that. So, about a veteran.
But the style, it does seem very old school.
I'm not sure. It's Kano. We've had him before for something. I can't remember what. So which comic?
Yeah, but
So
it's so good. I mean, I was so impressed by this, and I had to mention it right away at the beginning because I was just so excited to talk about this with you.
yeah, no, but absolutely. I mean, again, they've done stuff like that before in Valiant. I mean, you remember the Bloodshot thing with
With the flip.
yeah, it was the last Bloodshot volume we reviewed or discussed.
Yeah, where she did that flip off the
Exactly.
canyon. Yeah.
So, but obviously within this comic, it's a much bigger part of the language. So, either subtly or like on those first pages as you were, gushing over.
Right. And even that whole part where they kind of stop the comic to give that whole like the feeling of, when a movie stops and it says like, well, this is a sticky situation I got into. How did I get into this? And then it rewinds to the beginning. I love that kind of like freeze frame that they did there with the little like Valiant Entertainment LLC would like to remind you that this story is purely work of fiction and any similarities to events, corporate names, or people living in, that whole thing. That was hilarious. That's a good joke. I mean, we're going to probably get into this later because there's a lot of comedy in this, and I don't usually do comedy in comics. I don't read fast enough to get the pacing. But these are a lot of these jokes that came up in here were jokes that could be gotten no matter how fast you read it. None of these jokes needed timing. You know what I mean? Like I could have read this slowly, and his whole like the old man realizing that he's about to go into the wood chipper, and then the pause. I mean, it works so well. I feel like I need to stop saying that this has become my favorite comic. Like I need to stop saying that phrase, because it seems like every other week I then read another better comic that then becomes my favorite comic, and I can't remember the last favorite comic that I had. So it's kind of hard because I just need to say like, okay, let's just tick these off. Like, I like this one, tick. This was a good one, tick. Because at some point we're going to have a list of Chris's favorite comics, and it's going to be comics I can't remember, like best comics. Man, this was so good. This is what Quantum and Woody should be all the time.
Yeah, but I'm not sure what's different with Quantum and Woody here. I mean, besides the art in that sense.
Well, the art isn't like, I mean, we can get to it a little bit later. I think if maybe you have some questions directly about the comedy or something like that, but it feels like the comedy, I don't know, maybe I was reading it faster or something like that, but I did feel more laughy at the jokes. Maybe they weren't as, I don't know, maybe because this is, we're kind of getting like talking back and forth a lot here. Maybe Quantum isn't as good of a straight man for Woody, because I feel like maybe Armstrong and Archer are a better character for Woody to play off of. Maybe it just has this combination that there's these two characters that I've grown to really like, and these two characters that I don't really like, but because they both, I guess because I don't get the worst, like for me personally, the worst of Quantum and Woody. They both have to kind of be subdued here because they're sharing their book now with this other duo. And so I feel like the best of both is coming out in this comic. And this way I could really enjoy it. And it was kind of like this thing, like you have this friend that you kind of like, but if you're around him too long, you kind of get annoyed with him. And I feel like that's the same thing with Quantum and Woody. Like in a sense, I can like, oh yeah, well, they're kind of neat or interesting. If I spend too much time with them, like for example, an entire volume, they get really annoying. But with this was a nice kind of dose of Quantum and Woody, always sprinkled with a really nice dose of Archer and Armstrong. I was talking now for about 10 minutes straight. On to the questions.
So yeah, no, it was nice hearing all excited, and also yeah, I mean, as I was saying, it's definitely part of the visual language used for this volume. The whole what's called I'm not sure what the like proper term it would be for it. It's like split image panelist thing.
Yeah.
I mean, cinematic, sure, but you can be cinematic without doing that.
I mean, the cinematic part really came up with the whole title sequence, the credits. And this, I feel like the way that she got out of the car, that was a very cinematic pacing. Because I feel like you see something like that much more in cinema than you do in comics. Because Very similar. I mean, this goes back to this thing that I kind of mentioned a while ago, that I feel like comics are kind of basing themselves off of cinema. Like it's less them kind of being their own thing and kind of like, okay, well, how are we doing this? And they're basing it off of cinema. They're becoming more cinematic, because I feel like something like this is so unnecessary to really draw, because you literally have to draw every single panel. With a cinematic shot, like if you're doing this in a film, all you're doing is holding the camera on the person for a little bit longer, and then the editor can decide. There's not like real effort in here, because like there's no real effort to see someone walk out of a car. Sure, there's a feeling that you get by it. There's a calmness or maybe even a slight irritation, depending on what kind of film you're watching. If it's so slow, like, I mean, a lot of the shots in Breaking Bad were meant to do that, to kind of give this uncomfortable feeling of just slowness and stuff like that. And that's what I mean, is like you have to have these kind of things where you can, with something like comics, you have to actually draw every single panel. And I feel like the extra effort isn't really worth it, if you know what I mean. I don't think that would be something that would naturally evolve out of a purely comic background, if you know what I mean.
So no, I think I understand what you mean.
Like, didn't you tell me that like the pacing in comics has gotten much slower since, like, in the modern comics?
Well, that's more about the plot progression, more of it.
Okay.
I mean, obviously, it's part of how many. I mean, that's one thing I like about this volume. So it just feels a lot more. It just feels like there's a lot more content.
Oh yeah.
Like when you're, again, same real estate in terms of same size pages, but yes, feels more like an like a European album. If you take something like Lucky Luke or Asterix, a page there, sure, it's a larger format, but a page there has 4 rows of panels, 5 sometimes depending on the artist. So you get a lot of story on one page. You get a lot of just dialogue, scenes, and that's just something I felt was kind of nice here. It's very. It's like very, I mean, obviously most comics are very quadratic in terms of just layout, is following the page shape. Mm-hmm. But this one here just feels a lot more, I don't know, symmetrical in some ways.
Yeah, it does. I mean, especially now, if you zoom out, you probably see a lot of the thumbnails looking very, symmetrical.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, again, not like as a hard rule. But it just feels, it's similar to if we want to compare the highly lauded Watchmen with a story about an ass map.
Yeah.
So but it has that kind of similar feel of where where they had the whole decision about, okay, it's a 3x3 grid every page, and it kind of has, again, doesn't have that like template, but it just feels like the pages they have a setup. And they look very nice, and make sense. Like, yes, again, looking through on the thumbnails here.
Yeah.
Page 22. I mean, look at that little thing there in the top 3 panels.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'd say that's pretty much unnecessary, that split in the top there. But It's showing that the lit window. Where he is.
Yes, exactly.
So again, it could, we still see a door and all that stuff. So, we still understand, okay, it's in this building. So, again, like establishing shot, and then we have, just a mid shot of him in there. But again, it's this symmetry of the page there. What's called? I mean, the only thing that really, quote unquote, kills the symmetry would be panel 4 of the CD. Because, that's not an image of Archer there. And again, but it's still following the size. It feels very surgically precise, these pages.
Well, I gotta say, I did have a feeling. This is why I thought this was done by some sort of veteran, because I remember I mentioned some sort of comic last episode, and you said like, "Ooh, but it's done by a veteran," so whatever. So I thought this was like comic, but because it felt very old to me. And that kind of gave me, now that you're mentioning Watchmen, I'm like, yes, exactly. This is kind of the same style that Watchmen is also drawn in. I can't really talk about the art in that sense, but there's something to these lines or these color choices or the color palette or something that reminds me a lot of just older style comics. I mean, do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, but it's the what's it called? I mean, it's obviously digitally colored, but it doesn't have this. It's not this painted look that a lot of more modern or like comics have.
Okay, is that kind of what it is?
No, but like due to the ease of the coloring now with digital coloring, people like kind of like painting it more. A lot more like filters over it.
Right.
I mean, consider obviously the artist has no issues with backgrounds, but consider how many panels have no backgrounds.
Oh my God, I just noticed that. Yeah.
Like page 25, it felt very noticeable. They're just in this green ether.
Yeah, I didn't even notice that.
So, but again, it makes sense then for the next what's called page. We see that okay, well, it's just been woods in the background, so it's not like
right.
But still, it's and again, same with with Archer in the apartment. But they have a lot of fun with using the colors in the background as for effect. Like take page 60 for example. With Quantum and Armstrong fighting.
All the time? You're just going back and forth all these.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's going through the thumbnail, so kind of like seeing what grabs my eye.
Yeah, I don't have that. But yeah, page 60 was really nice. Yeah.
Yeah, but you see there, just the nice big strong red as they hit, and then like.
This is also a really good example of the comedy that doesn't need to be read fast. This is not this witty banter kind of comedy. This is physical comedy that you can do in comics. I mean, I was laughing at this. I was like, I get it because they were in Bad Replica store or whatever that little museum thing was, and everything breaks. This is funny. This is hilarious. And again, like you said, the background definitely helped. I mean, you get from this red when they attack to this grayish green when everything falls apart. It's hilarious. And this is funny. This is the kind of stuff that I like in comics. Comics for dumb people who can't read fast.
So, yeah, but you were mentioning that before as well. So is it that the jokes are more dependent within each panel? Like the panel itself is the joke. So once you get to it, you can laugh at it rather than it's about the timing of the delivery.
I don't know. I can't really say it quickly, or I can't really say that right now because I don't have an actual example ready. I don't know. I just feel like either the situations were funny, just like Archer getting drunk and kind of just being drunk all the time. That was just funny in itself, just because it was a theme that kind of carried on. And no matter what he's saying, it was kind of funny in the sense of like, oh, Archer would never say this. He's drunk. It's not the best comedy, but it's like, oh yeah, okay, I get it. It's amusing. You're kind of smiling while you're reading it. To just like stuff where, yeah, there were some word jokes, but it didn't feel like this didn't feel like a sitcom. You know what I mean? Like I always say that Quantum and Woody feels like a sitcom. It feels like the jokes are more in the conversation, in the writing, than they are in the action or in the story. This story is basically ripe for comedy. We're going on a journey of the hobos trying to find the hobo gold or hobo treasure using a map carved off of someone's ass. That is a funny setup.
Well, yeah, I mean, I just, I liked it too, but I couldn't help but let out a little chuckle there as well.
Right. I mean,
when you
that's
hear
what I mean.
that.
It's like the jokes write themselves, you know what I mean? And it's just this funny situation. It's kind of like with, I don't know, like think about the Hangover movie, the first one. It's just a funny situation. The situation itself helps because you're like, all right, so these 4 guys get drunk, really drunk one night on their bachelor night, I guess it was.
Yeah.
And then 3 guys try to find the 4th guy who went missing. And by doing that, they're retracing their steps from the last night. That's funny in itself. It's just like, oh, what weird things did they come up with? Like finding that tiger, humping that tiger. The jokes write themselves in that sense because they're in funny situations. And I feel like this is exactly that. They're in a situation where jokes can be easily and quickly made without having to kind of like resort to this sitcom humor of forcing 2 jokes a page. I mean, that's an actual thing with sitcom writing. You have to have 2 jokes a minute on most sitcoms. And that's like so much pressure because you're not really, you're making jokes that are obvious. You're making jokes that are bad. You're making jokes that are just like forced. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of Quantum and Woody is like that, but because it's usually just like, oh, it's focusing more on how Quantum wants to be a superhero more than how Woody is just like, so it's kind of like Woody is just along for the ride with Quantum, making the jokes on the side while he's trying to be serious.
And he's not like impeding too much either. So you're not just getting upset about him. It's more of this snarky sidekick.
Right. That's all it is. But the situations themselves are never funny. I mean, it's always like, we want to make money being superheroes because we need to pay for our stuff. I mean, yeah, there's some funny things like, hey, our dad is a female pregnant goat. Okay, that can lead to some jokes, but most of the jokes have already been done. And even in this, they kind of made the good joke with that, was just like, what was it? I think Armstrong says, I'm like, wait, did you just call her dad? And then, Quantum or Woody, I can't remember who it was just like, don't ask, it's a long story or something like that. And it's just like, yeah, that's a fun, kind of nice little side thing. Like, all right, let's get that away. People know it's good. So I feel like you need to put Quantum and Woody into funny situations instead of having them do something serious, or having Quantum wanting to do something serious and Woody just going along for the ride making jokes on the side. Because he just feels annoying. And this worked much better.
No, but I get what you mean. So it would be something like that I feel would work with actually a lot of media these days. Because there's this tendency I feel nowadays for, I think thanks to like the serialization of a lot of stuff, to kind of make everything escalate and be important. Like if you take like all the, like all these like superhero movies and such, they always have to be really big, and it has to be something big for the main hero. Take like the Iron Man movies, he has to really develop every film.
Of course, yeah.
And again, I'm not saying, I'm against character development. But when I look back at a lot of comics and such, like take something like, again, going for European ones, like Asterix or Lucky Luke or Tintin.
Yeah.
They never really had any character development in that sense, besides, the evolution of writing by the writer and artist.
Right.
It's never about like, okay, this is the album where Asterix really learns to be a man. It's like, no, they stay the same, like the relationships they have. But they put them in funny situations. Yes, like you were saying here with Quantum and Woody. I think
that's the kind of thing. It's more like a TV show, where they always have to kind of go back to the status quo. They can't really develop too much. 'Cause I mean, how fun would Family Guy be? I mean, I haven't watched it for like God knows how many years, 5, 6, 7 years maybe. But how funny would that be if Peter actually learned lessons?
Yeah, but exactly. But it's also the practical nature of it. You have to have it be like, ready for the next writer.
Right. And not only that, but also like that's why series that go on too long, like say 2.5 Men, it just gets annoying after a while because you're seeing these same people kind of in an arrested development. They don't grow at all. I mean, they then start making jokes about how like, well, let's compare like season 1 of 2.5 Men and one of the latest ones. I used to like Alan's character because he was just trying to be a good father. And that's all he was trying to do. He was trying to be a good father to his son. He was unlucky in almost anything. He was not lucky in love. He was not lucky at his work. His son kind of didn't really like him. So he was just trying to be a good father and try to like whatever. And that was respectable. I was like, oh, cool. Like, this is a nice guy. By the end, he was such a dick. Like, he wasn't even close to what he was before. He was a piece of shit.
Character
like
development.
He was yeah, but I don't know if that's character development. But that's the thing. Like, he just became this caricature of himself. And that's what I think a lot of these kind of shows happen. And I don't know where I was going with this thought, but yeah, the idea is that when these things go on too long, because you have to keep on bringing them back and kind of making them not kind of like letting them grow, I feel like people can get annoyed with that kind of stuff because you're seeing these people learn lessons in these shows. Like, you have to be a more attentive husband, Peter. it's like, oh, okay, I get that, Lois. Thank you for very much. Kiss, kiss, kiss. End episode. Next episode, he's a total dick again. I think something like that just gets annoying. But, you know, Quantum of Woody ends, right? They changed something, if I remember correctly.
I'm not sure what you mean, ends.
It does not end? I thought you said, no, or am I confusing this with Archer and Armstrong?
Oh, you mean in terms of a series?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this run will end. It has one more volume. Like, this doesn't count as that.
Okay,
So
good.
there's like Quantum and Woody Volume 4. So, but then after that, then it's always hard saying like if it's canceled, you know, in the sense of because you know miniseries isn't canceled; it's finished. So, but yeah, it finishes there, and then I'm not sure when, but there's like a new one coming out soon. Which honestly, you know, going on a more like overall meta level about the Valiant.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a nice way of working like that. So by not being like too stuck on like, okay, we gotta keep this series running. You know, they kind of keep a look at it and like, you know what, it's you know, it's not doing super well right now. Let's finish up, you know, the trade here, and you know, how about we put in this series instead? And since they only have about like 5-6 at a time, so it's, I don't know, it feels always very manageable.
Yeah, I like that idea of you kind of be realistic about stuff. Like you take risks. I think that's something that I really enjoy about Valiant so far. I mean, I'm seeing so many different things. I'm reading so many different things all the time. And obviously we're reading everything. Like we're not leaving anything out. Like we're not leaving out Quantum of Woody because I don't like it. And I feel like that's something that I also like, that even though even though Archer and Armstrong is one of my favorite comics right now, I'm kind of happy that they're ending it at some point, because it's like, well, we've told their story. We don't need anything more. I mean, obviously these characters still exist and we can bring them back if we need them, but we're done with their story, so we're going to go move on to something else. We're going to take a risk on a different character. We're going to try to develop this or that Mistress Mirage or Dr. Mirage thing that's coming out as well. Like for us, at least, coming out. Again, great idea. Like let's try a new character. That's something that I also feel like is not done enough in American media generally. I don't think there's like too many risks taken. Like if a show does well, they run it into the ground before they cancel it. I mean, they did that with Scrubs. They did that with 2.5 Men when they brought on Ashton Kutcher, which again, I love that guy, but you know, it felt so weird in that show. And I mean, they're doing it with so many other things just because like they get the ratings, they still have high ratings, so why should we quit? And it's usually always when then the writers come in and go like, well, we're done. Like we're not going to tell any more stories. We're like with Breaking Bad. I mean, I'm pretty sure AMC, I think it was AMC, would have loved to continue that for another 2 years because, you know, they were getting all the ratings, they were getting all the views. But the writers went in and said, nope, we're done. We're going to tell we're finishing the story of Walter White now, and that's it. Which, by the way, I've only ever watched one episode of Breaking Bad. I don't know why I'm bringing it up so much in this episode.
Yeah, we saw it together, the first episode.
Yeah, we did.
So, and I thought you had seen more by the way you were talking about it now.
Yeah, right. Well, I've been
how do you know it's so
cinematic? Well, I've been watching a lot of videos about Breaking Bad, or I've seen a lot of videos about it, like talking about the filmmaking stuff. I'm trying to get more into filmmaking now. Again, I actually studied it, which is kind of weird that but anyway, so I'm trying to get back into it a little bit. So I've been watching some stuff about cinematic stuff and stuff like that. So, yeah, I've been seeing a lot of Breaking Bad stuff.
All right. So, but yeah, no, it's...
Can I just mention, but then we're going to get to your questions, I promise. I love how at the beginning of a lot of these issues, they have that character list. You know what I mean? Like on page 75 and 76.
Yeah.
You know, this is the kind of thing that I talked about a lot also on this podcast already, that I like this idea because a lot of the characters are so hard to distinguish, especially between artists, that there should always be, like in manga, always at the beginning of an issue or a volume of manga, have the artist draw all the characters that are going to be present in this comic and have a little bit of a name and a description underneath them, so that we, the reader, can familiarize ourselves with them again. Because obviously, if these things happen once a month and you're picking it up again, I don't generally want to. Well, I mean, again, we haven't read them issue by issue. We've always been reading them volume by volume. But I feel like it would be hard to kind of jump in again with a lot of these things. I mean, obviously, there's that Our Story So Far. But I feel like this Our Story So Far could be much easier done with portraits of the characters and just talking about what these characters have been doing in this episode or the last issue. Because then not only do I see, okay, how are these characters drawn? I'm also reminded, oh, these are the characters. I mean, obviously you can do like fun stuff with here on page 76, where then they also have the tiger and the chimpanzee as part of the characters because they're just like in that scene right then. That's funny. That's a nice little joke on the side. But I really feel like it is valuable to have something like this, especially as someone like me who just, I don't know, you can't recognize these people outside of their uniforms with a lot of these kind of characters. I mean, we talked about this before as well with how Archer just looks so plain. And even Peter Sanchek, just so plain. Yeah, well,
he's a special case, Peter.
Yeah.
So, no, but
you know what I mean?
I feel with this book in particular, so I feel it's not as big of a problem since, even though Archer, is the most plain, he's still the only one, what's called with a shaved head. So it's easy enough to recognize everyone. I mean, Armstrong, you can't mix up with anyone. Quantum is both the only black guy and the only one with a full suit.
Yeah.
So, Woody, has, again, uniform-wise, but even then, it's... I mean, the only one's possibly confusing would be Archer and Woody. And
right, I was thinking that too. Yeah, I was thinking that too, but then Woody has that little fluff in his hair, so immediately you kind of recognize.
You know what? Do you know what just struck me with Woody there?
What?
So he kind of looks like an adult Calvin.
Oh, Jesus, you're right.
So, like, I'm looking on page, the one page 76, like the big middle one there at the end. I don't know, that's... And honestly, obviously it's not, what's called true or anything, but, kind of like the little headcanon of that. Yeah. He goes, no, but it's got to be an interesting development for him. He's very creative and all that, and then just goes off on his own and all this crazy shit happening.
Can I say one thing, though? I mean, I've been saying so many things this episode. I'm sorry. I'm kind of taking over this episode. It's pretty much 90% me talking.
No, I don't mind. So let's go on. Because I didn't actually feel like I had super much to talk about. I mean, obviously, things to discuss, but, it's if you have, all this inside you that you have to get out, that's...
Yeah, I feel like I need to get all this out. Anyway, so what I'm trying to say is, why do Quantum and Woody have powers?
Do you remember?
No, why? Like, why do they have powers? They almost never use them.
So they didn't mention that in here somewhere as well?
Yeah, I think this is something like, remember you have powers or something like that, or remember you can, Yeah,
exactly. Well, my friend can't die, sort of. So on the bright side, half of them probably survived. Oh, right. And actually, my guy can make force fields, so he's probably cool. Right. God, for superheroes, we use our powers a lot less than you think.
Yeah, it's crazy, though, because, like, except for when they're kind of fighting, they don't really use their powers at all. I mean, I think, like, someone who can create force fields could maybe figure out a way to maybe levitate objects with that, maybe. Like, if you can create a force field around an object, then you can kind of control the force field by pulling it up and down. I don't know. It just feels kind of like, well, why do they have superpowers if, they're not going to... That's not, like, not at all part of their story.
No, I see what you mean. I mean, considering how little they use them and such, definitely could have gone more for, like, sort of, I guess, a budget Batman.
Right.
Like Quantum. I mean, and Quantum kind of has that already with his utility belt. Stuff like that. But if they went that route instead, so it's just pure, gadgetry and just trying to do things like normal.
Yeah.
But I guess with the powers, they, I guess first and foremost, they, are interesting to enemies in terms of like, they might, we might have to consider them more, or as well as, maybe something like good ways to get out of situations. You know, sometimes you just need one well-placed, you know, like blast from Woody, or, you know, oh, we're getting shot at. Ah, wait, we got force fields.
Yeah.
You know, instead of just saying like, oh, we were lucky we weren't shot there.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I just feel like it's kind of a waste. I mean,
No, but you're right. It's for the most
Yeah.
part, it is unnecessary, especially as a comedic book. You know, it's not really,
Right.
the powers aren't amusing either. You know, it's not like,
right. I mean, I do like that whole thing when, who was it? When was it Archer who pulled out the branch that was inside Armstrong, and then Quantum kind of put a force field inside his body to stop the bleeding? I think that was kind of a creative use of his force field, and it would kind of show like they were trying to help, but then I guess Armstrong saw that as an aggression. I don't know.
yeah, I don't know. It's so it's cool. Again, you know, it's just nice of him to do that. You know, showing for all the like sort of bit of a martyrdom that what's called Eric has. You know, he's still like there, like, oh, I mean, you know, he doesn't realize that he's immortal. So like, oh, better, you know, stop that bleeding for him.
Well, I mean, he doesn't realize. I mean, he doesn't know, obviously, because
Yeah, exactly. That's what I
haven't
mean.
met
So
yet.
it's not, you know, he's doing the heroic thing. Yeah.
right.
So also Leah's loving there again, the you know, playing with the panels there, you know, having the guy faint in the middle of the hole. Nice
Yes.
framing as well.
It's so good, dude. The art is so beautiful in this. I mean,
Well, again, the
Wow.
comic art of it, because again, you know, I mean, the actual art itself is great, but like I said, you know, there's one thing in being a good artist. You know, you're good at anatomy and stuff like that, composition.
yeah.
But then being a comic artist is its own thing as well.
Oh, definitely.
And this guy definitely knows how to. Again, I don't know how much of this is Kano on his own. So, or if it's, you know, the writers like being very detailed, you know, in their scripts.
Right.
So it's always hard to know.
I would really love to read a script of this.
So yeah, you have to dialogue it in like, okay, Kano, do whatever the hell you want.
Right. I just love how, like, coming from writing film scripts and stuff like that, and just kind of seeing how comic book scripts are written. I mean, I was reading some of this. I have this book. I think you gave it to me, didn't you? The DC Comics writing book.
Yeah, I think
How to
so,
Write
yeah.
DC. Yeah. And then there's just one sample page in there where someone says, like, here, do this or not. I mean, whatever. Just do what you feel like doing. I was like, that would never be in a film script. You can't just be like, yeah, just whatever. I don't know. Just something cool happens here.
So yeah, it's what's called off day for the scriptwriter.
Right. I mean, what do scriptwriters really do, right, Humphrey?
Exactly. So they just kind of come into existence.
Right. We just come in here and get paid more to write just pages, and then you have to slave over art.
Nah, of course it's, you know, it's again just for comics. I always find it a bit. I don't know. I think it's because of the lower amount of people working on it.
Yeah.
You know, it feels like I guess I just feel a little bit with the writer sometimes than just having. I mean, again, obviously the writer's important, but I just feel within comics there's so many, you know, writer artists as well.
Right.
You know, who again, you know, not everyone's great, of course, but there's so many good ones that it doesn't feel like being just a writer is, I don't know how to say it. Not saying being just a writer isn't enough, but it's just that due to the fact that you can have a lot of others.
Right.
Like if you take film, for example, you know, unless it's one of those, you know, really low budget or a really like auteur project, you know, you don't have like one guy doing it all.
Right.
You know, even if you as a director maybe know how to write scripts or whatever, you know, you're still kind of like, yeah, I know, but I'm focusing on this. I just, you need to work with the writer here to, you know, get something working. You know, while at the same time looking at all this other stuff that has to be done. And so, but with comics, because, you know, it's a lot more of a low budget affair, and also, you know, it's just a lot simpler to do than, you know, all these others due to the lack of people needed.
Well, I feel like there's a difference between being an artist and being a comic book artist, because I feel like a lot of times comic book artists are also writers, kind of like storyboard artists are also writers. They know how to tell a story through pictures. They might not know necessarily the best dialogue. They might I mean, because I think that this is a thing like where you can do two things at the same time, but you can just like I don't know, because if you specialize in something, you're obviously better than someone who does two things half-assed. You have either full-ass or you half-ass. And obviously with someone who focuses all of his time doing writing, that person will probably be a better writer than someone who knows how to write but also is an artist. But because comic book art is such a storytelling medium, because when you're drawing, you have to tell a story through your drawings. You can't just, not like normal artists who then do like a picture, like they draw a painting. I mean, obviously they tell some sort of story with that painting, but they're not telling sequential images, like a story through sequential images.
There's no pacing. I think that's the big thing of it.
Right.
You have to have this one instance of something.
And so I've been focusing a lot on writing a script, a comic book script. And when I was telling my girlfriend about it, we were kind of talking about the script, and she was like, well, maybe you should find someone to draw it. I mean, there's probably a lot of people online who are looking for writers to draw. And I started laughing because, like, no, they're not. There are so many writers looking for artists online and almost no artists looking for writers because the artists will write their own stories.
Exactly. Again, it's not saying that it's going to be good. But they
do it themselves.
They have the more valuable part, so to speak, or at least the more sought after part.
Exactly. And I wouldn't give you Unrecht. I wouldn't call you wrong by saying the artist does give the more valuable part, because that's what people see. And here's something that I've always been a little bit annoyed at is that, yeah, you're an animator. You're an artist, you draw things, you put stuff online. And also my girlfriend, she's a 3D artist. She does creature design. So what she does is she creates this creature in, like today, she created a creature in 4 hours. She sat down on a computer, worked for 4 hours, 5 hours, and she put it up online and got loads of likes and people like her. And she has been in magazines and she got invited to a convention to talk and stuff like that, because she's just constantly putting out pictures online. Because when you're on Instagram or whatever, you can kind of scroll through this, see an image and go like, I like this, click. With a writer, you have a script or you have a book or you have a manuscript or whatever. People have to sit down and dedicate time to it. If I had a comic book, it doesn't matter how good the writing is. Of course, there are some exceptions, like the One Punch Man webcomic. 9 times out of 10, if someone sees crappy art, they are going to jump over it without reading a single word. So someone like me, I mean, I tried this myself. I tried creating a webcomic. Yes, I created 100 strips of this webcomic with literally a stick figure. And while the art did get better over time, it was never anything amazing. And I'm pretty sure the writing wasn't even that good either. But you know what I mean? It's like, as a writer, I feel like it's harder to show your talent or to get people interested, because you need a lot of attention span with this. You need to present this to people, and people need to like take time to read it. I mean, even with my girlfriend, when I was like, here's a script I wrote, could you please look at it? She actually had to sit down and spend like 20 minutes reading through the script. And then she was like, yeah, it's good. And then that's it. But then when she shows me a picture, I can be like, oh my God, there's so much emotion and color and beauty in this and all that kind of stuff. And I'll put a link to her Instagram in the description, so if you want to check it out. But yeah, she does all this amazing stuff. So it's like this thing where you have this immediate feeling, this immediate response. Whereas with writing, it's just kind of like, all right, well, let's take 20 minutes to read the script to see if it's good or not. And even afterwards, you're like, yeah, it's okay. It's good. Yeah, I like it. I liked it. Yeah. I would love to see it done. Right? Because that's all scripts are. They're only a manuscript.
Yeah,
Sorry,
there's only...
No,
exactly. They're only blueprints.
Yeah, blueprints. That's what the word I was looking for. Yeah. They're only blueprints.
No, but I agree. I mean, what's called... take something like, for example... what's the equivalent of a doodle in writing?
I don't think there is. I mean, you can't, a haiku? An outline maybe?
A haiku?
Haiku? No, because that's also a finished product. That's a thing.
Yeah, but that's what
I guess it would. Yeah, I guess it would be notes or something like that. But yeah, yeah. I've always been very envious of you and my girlfriend and just people who can like sit down and just create something by just doodling.
Yeah, but that's what I mean, though, in terms of, even a doodle, even something, just it's, off proportion, just nothing is not colored, just a little doodle.
Right.
But even then, it has this value of some sort because you can see what it is.
Right.
And it's like, that's funny or that's cute or like, I like the idea here.
Right.
So, and I think another thing too, Chris. So, we kind of gone just entirely sort of not totally unrelated, but more personal really here. But what's called? I think another thing, and this is what I mentioned as well. We discussed these kinds of things before. There's always something personal with any kind of like illustration, like any kind of drawing, even a doodle. But have all those same people sit down and start typing. If they all have the same font, all the same font size, at a glance, you can't tell the difference between them. You know what I mean?
No.
Now, obviously, everyone's going to have different content. Someone's wrote this kind of story, someone has a lot of spelling mistakes.
Right.
But if you're just assuming like everyone had their job, their task was to fill up a page, with Times New Roman size 12. That that's the only things they were told.
Right. Yeah.
If you have them all, like all those pages printed out and put beside each other, would you at a glance be able to tell the difference between them? Yes,
Of course not.
And but if you had the same thing of just everyone drawing a doodle and just as long as you fill up the page,
right?
Again, of course, it's just so much. Like, just anything, but. That's what I mean. One page of this like script or story could be about dragons. The other one is an erotic tale or something. But you can't tell at a glance. And yeah, that's just as you were saying there. That's why artists can kind of take care of themselves in a sense. While the writer has to struggle more to get people to help put their vision to life.
Exactly.
So, all right. So, I mean, it's honestly, this was, a lovely discussion.
Yeah, maybe we should go back to the Delinquents real quick. Is there a second volume of the Delinquents?
No. Just this little crossover.
Oh, what a shame.
So yeah, again, it's one of those things. I rarely check like what the sales of these things are.
Yeah.
Especially also, it's hard later to see what the trade paperback sales are, because unlike the floppies, they're kind of always reprinted. Like take like The Dark Knight Returns. I mean, that's always in print because it's just everyone buys it. But it's hard to kind of tell then like, okay, so how many were sold this month? Well, we're not really keeping track of that.
Right. So
you can only really go for like when it came out, like how much was it sold. But but yeah, no, it's sorry, just totally like off my rocker now. But if we just go like the little plot points and such, what do you think of Mondostano? Obviously Monsanto, like parallel.
Yeah. Well, let's get a little bit political here.
Yeah.
As a vegetarian.
Oh yeah, sure.
This is kind of like one of those things where I'm like, well, I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about this. I mean, obviously, that I'm kind of into the whole, obviously, this spirituality and stuff like that as well. And I do enjoy these kind of characters who are like putting on this act of spirituality to get a profit and stuff like that. I do like that because there's this opposites kind of coming together and stuff like that. Juxtaposition is the Oxford term for that, I guess. And I do like the way that the cows, or these genetic cows or whatever they were, kind of rebel at the end, and they become nice at the end. That was kind of nice. And they killed him. I like that because he was a kind of a dick. But yeah, I mean, I didn't like the company too much. I mean, it did kind of have this whole kind of like holding up a mirror to corporate America kind of thing. I mean, obviously that the whole, I don't know how bad the crop irrigation stuff is here in Europe compared to America. I've heard that it's much worse in America. They use much more stronger pesticides than are even allowed in Europe. Like they're actually banned in Europe. That's why you can't even sell them in Europe because they're so bad for your health. So I feel like this is a kind of a different thing. I mean, obviously this whole thing where at the beginning where this, what was her name? Miss Storm?
Yeah.
Something like that. When she went to that farmer and was talking about how like you're selling wheat, I think it was, with our genetic DNA inside it. And you never bought anything of it from us, so that's your fault. And he's like, well, the wind carries seeds, which is true, of course. And then they, of course, going way out of their, just literally killing everyone. I mean, that's just like really like holding up a mirror to America, like, look, this is what you guys are doing, in a much more like crazy sense. But yeah, the company itself was just like this typical kind of, looks like the good guy to the outside, but is actually really evil on the inside. I mean, we've seen this so many times before, but it was enjoyable.
Yeah, and it was nice lines too. So, sir, this is 21st century. This is the 21st century. Nature is our bitch.
Right. I loved that line because nature's not your bitch. Nature's coming back, and this nature's coming back strong.
I mean, you could say that in general about humanity, though. I mean,
global warming, Humphrey. Global warming, Humphrey. We're going to all die.
I believe
soon.
It's called
Unless
climate
we
change now.
Yeah. Okay.
So
okay.
So I guess better branding. So but
yeah.
What's called? No. I mean, my point is simply, that's just the humanity in a nutshell, though. While all other animals, just have to hope that they're born with some traits that help them survive the environment.
Right.
We just like, what? Let's make nature our bitch instead.
Right. I mean, it is human nature the way that we do that. We just
the issue now with the real Monsanto and all their similar companies. Simply
wait, that's a real company?
Well, yeah, Monsanto. I mean, this is Montestano.
That's a real company? Oh my God, I did not know that.
Oh, you didn't? Yeah, no. There's a company. I mean, that's, and they do it. Well, again, they don't do exactly what's here, to my knowledge. But the first pages here, when she comes in, are very typical issues that happen, because they purposefully create they purposefully genetically modify like wheat, for example, that can't be reused. So you have to buy them from the company. And like or like other fruits and other like plants, like because like in these plants they'll have their own seeds and whatever, but they made them in such a way that they're what's called infertile.
Holy shit! This is a real company.
Yeah.
Their stock price is shortened to moo.
So, but yeah, no, it's one of those things. Like they've done good too.
So that was that whole thing with the any companies close to this or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
That was actually, because I thought that was just kind of like, like how at the end of all movies they always have that thing where it says,
yeah,
any persons living or dead, whatever, just as like a safety to be like, if anyone does say anything. I thought that was just kind of like a joke, like, because I did know that there were companies who were aggressive like this, but I didn't actually know that there was an actual company called this. Like they were literally using that name.
Well, again, similar. So Monsanto is the real name, and then here it's Mondo. What was it say here? Mondostano.
Yeah, Stano. Yeah.
But that's the thing, is it's such a lazy change that it's obvious who they're supposed to be.
Right. It's like Sony and their change in a lot of anime to phony.
Well, that's just fun because hey, you're
which
phony.
Is hilarious. Yeah.
So yeah, no, but it's just fun in that sense.
But I also really like the enemy, Mr. Meat.
The guy following them.
Yeah, I really like that just because he kind of has this whole feeling of the huge power that you can't defeat because he's just so, because he regenerates and stuff like that. And I really like that in a villain, because it's the kind of villain that you can't beat, and it kind of makes sense that he keeps coming back.
No, I know what you mean. It's I'm trying to think of an example right now, but you could take like that zombie from the old like Karl Barks and John Rosa stories.
Right.
So I mean, again, there was no way of defeating that in that sense. You can just like run away and like let's go slow him down.
Yeah, but even in this story, when they kind of knocked Mr. Meat off the mountain, I was like, he's not dead. What are you talking about? And they were all celebrating like if he was dead, and no one confirmed the death, you know. And then at the end of the comic, when then he basically showed that he was still alive, I was like, yeah, of course, this is how you do that. And then we know that this character's still alive, and we're going to see him in a later comic, hopefully again. Oh man, this the Meat Storm. That's hilarious. Sorry, I just love that. I just love that name, Meat Storm.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's both a shipping name,
Eat less meat, people. Unless it's Meat Storm. You can eat Meat Storm.
Yeah.
Because he regenerates.
So, but honestly, wouldn't that be something interesting though? A character made of like pure beef, and they regenerate, and then they sacrifice themselves constantly.
But isn't that Mr. Meat? Wasn't that the whole idea of those cattle?
So what's that idea?
I thought that was the idea, because you can cut off their meat and they just regenerate the meat.
So I can't remember them actually saying that, but
I thought that was the whole idea, because like they were just constantly cutting off pieces, but they would just regenerate. So I thought that was the whole idea. I don't know, but there are actually really good fake meats out there. So yeah, no. Right, Humphrey?
Yep.
I forced you to eat. I forced him to eat a
corn.
Corn, and you liked it.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's an okay substitute.
Yeah. Even eating no meat once a week already helps the planet. So
yeah.
I'm not going to be a pushy vegetarian or whatever. I'm just going to keep it. This will be the only time when it comes up in the comic. By the way, wouldn't it be so funny if Bloodshot went vegetarian or vegan?
Well, I guess there are other sources of protein.
A lot of sources of protein. Broccoli, for example, is really good. And spinach. Wouldn't that be so good? Like, I mean, just again, I'm not saying that this should happen, because I'm not one of those like vegetarian that goes around and like whenever someone eats meat, I run up to them and be like, "You shouldn't be eating meat. Eat more vegetables, whatever." That kind of stuff. None like that.
Sure, you're not.
But I think I'm not, Humphrey. I'm not. I'm not. But like, I think it would just be so hilarious to see, like as like like how they did like these PSAs sometime in like the 90s or something, like with superheroes, and like just think about this like an animated Bloodshot somewhere in like a desert or in a forest or something like that, and there's no meat anywhere, and he's like, I need protein. He's like all like destroyed and something like that, and he gets up to like spinach or like broccoli or something and starts eating that, and he's like, this has so much protein in it, it's so good, and he like gains his, I don't know, something stupid like that. I'm sorry to all the meat eater fans that are listening to this.
So
if we lose subscribers after this episode, I will take that all to be my fault.
Nah, I don't know. Could be we have Monsanto, employees listening.
Yes, or stockholders of Moo.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's again, you kind of got most interesting things said in the beginning. So, I'm not really having too many other questions that haven't sort of at least been answered or discussed.
Right. I mean, again, like I was just scrolling through some of this, and I would just like to go back quickly to the comedy about how this isn't necessarily the like witty dialogue comedy, but more like the situation comedy. Like when that whole fight happened on the train, when was it Woody and Archer were peeing off the side of the train, and how it was hitting Quantum in the face.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's but it is one of those things where this is like a situational comedy kind of moment. It's not something that you need to read fast to understand. You don't need to get the pacing correct to enjoy that joke. But yeah, it's fun. This is just an example that I found by kind of scrolling through the comic right now.
So yeah, no, I mean, I was just looking through here a little bit, and I was finding some great lines here in like the last issue as well. When they're like just taking everything out of the giant cornucopia. Says, ooh,
yes.
Plus, under this model, I can legally claim no pesticides or GMOs were used in this process, so we can charge more.
Exactly.
It's I don't know. I've always I always find that funny as well. Yes, this because it's so true in that sense. But just this whole like people, these corporate kind of characters just get like, oh yes, then we can do this. I mean, it's like it's why the 1% were so funny.
Right. Profit.
Yeah, all their guards just got killed. It's like, oh great, we don't have to pay them now. Just downsized.
Right.
And we can hire some illegal workers for half the price.
Exactly.
So, but also stuff like, this too was on page 114. His whole story there. It's just such a stupid idea, but it's so funny. So I am a man of privilege. So, but all I wanted really to do was be a hobo.
Right.
So, but none of the hobos would accept me.
Right. Again, funny situations.
Yeah, it's so stupid. It's
Exactly.
Let's see here. But those vagabonds acted as if I weren't good enough. So I vowed I'd show them to find their treasure anyways. But it's just such but also the silliness with how he starts it off. I mean, he starts his, hobo thing with a butler.
Yes.
So, and again, that's a funny thing. It's not the poor, it's not a rags to riches story. It's not even a riches to rags, because those are usually, by accident, or like through their own fault. Here's like, no, I want to be a hobo. I don't want to see like live the true American life. So it's just
Did you ever listen to any of the Thrilling Adventure Hour that I recommended to you?
Only some of the stuff that you had showed, but I never really was in the mood to watch all of it
or listen to it.
Yeah.
Well, it's a podcast for anyone who doesn't know about it. It's actually really interesting. It's like this radio show podcast. It's ended now, but you can kind of listen to all the episodes in their backlog. It's on their Nerdist channel. It's actually really good because they also have like a hobo story, like I guess I can't remember what his name is, but it is this hobo. This I guess it's a rich person who learns the hobo way in order to find the hobo princess. It's actually a really fun story. It's about this guy who then he's rich and he becomes a hobo with this companion who's like a real hobo, and they kind of go through everything like, here's how you live the hobo way. And it's a really hilarious thing. And this kind of reminded me of that backstory that he had there. There was this rich kid who wanted to be a hobo. And it's kind of the same thing as this, what is it called? Down in something holler. I can't remember. It's been so long. Thrilling Adventure Hour has been ended for like 2 years already. It's a shame because it was so good. But yeah, go check out Thrilling Adventure Hour. Link in the description.
So not sponsored.
Well, yeah.
So, I don't know, just one last thing, I guess, maybe, if you don't have more things to discuss.
I don't have anything more to discuss, nope.
So, I like what's called the spread on page 119.
Is this the one that was really confusing for me to read?
I don't think so.
No, it wasn't, no. There was a different one. We can get back to that.
Yeah, sure.
This was hilarious.
Yeah, but I was going to ask, you had those when you were a kid too, right?
No, I did not.
You didn't have those sticker books?
Oh, sticker books like that? Well,
the ones where you could like play, basically. You had like a scene. And
I didn't.
No?
I never had that. Was that a thing?
Yeah. We'd often have them my mom would often get me and my sister one when we'd go on like long car trips or plane trips.
In Sweden or
anywhere
America?
Really. They were like available anywhere. What I can remember, you just go to like a gas station or something like that.
I'd never seen anything like this.
Yeah, there'd be some would be like licensed stuff, so you'd have like some famous cartoon characters on them. Others would be like generic environments, stuff. Like a farm, and you'd have all the animals. Right. But you'd basically be able to, it's a toy in that sense. And just like here, you'd then be able to peel off the quantum sticker, put them on the cornucopia there, and they're like, okay, I'm quantum and I'm, using my force field over here. So, and then you're like, oh, I'm going to jump to this building here. And then you peel it off and put them on top there.
Yeah.
Again, it's a silly thing, it's definitely not something that I think most people would be interested in these days. So, but it's just a neat thing to have.
Yeah, and I really like the idea of just like, we only have one page spread to do the whole fight. How are we going to do this? I have an idea. Let's make them do it themselves. And I just love how they also just mention like, and if you didn't enjoy it, then it's all your own imagination that sucks. It's not our fault. It's hilarious. I really love this comic because again, this is not a joke that needs pacing to understand. You don't need to read it fast. You don't need to get the right beat when you're reading it. It just works.
So yeah, no, but it's what's called it's a bit like things like this page, for example, really reminds me a lot of like Mad.
Yeah.
So because that's the same. I always find it kind of fun when they're almost like a little hostile to the reader. You know, it's kind of an interesting thing to do. I mean, you know, we're the ones who bought it, and then to have them insult us in a sense.
Yeah.
So or like self-deprecation as well. So like I remember some Mad magazine had some kind of little remark somewhere about, you know, so we'd tell you not to breed, but heck, you bought the Mad, so I guess that won't be a problem, you know, or something like that. Just no, but you know, just stuff like that is like, oh, like they know their stuff sucks, but then you're even worse for buying it. So which is just such a silly thing to do, but it's just so tongue in cheek, you know, I just love it.
Yeah, exactly.
But you had a page you didn't understand?
Yeah, it was just page 90. It's where they fight the horde on the train.
Yeah,
It was kind of hard to read. I didn't understand which direction to go and how, because it's kind of like a big spread, but then it didn't really make sense. Like you kind of read the first 4 panels, then you went down to the second row, and then you went up to the second page, first panel. But honestly, I didn't mind, because that page was so amazing on itself that I stopped reading it as actual panels and read it more as like one of those, just a splash page with a lot of things happening. Because it just looked so beautiful, just the way that it was drawn and the way that it was set up, that suddenly I was just like, you know what, let's get out of the whole idea of reading per panel and just enjoy this page, because it was a beautiful page.
So, well, honestly, I think, and this is something interesting I haven't really seen been done really in anything, but it's more like you're reading 2 rows at once. So, because like the first 2 rows, you know, they kind of, you know, you have to kind of read them like up and down. Then the middle ones as well. Yeah, that makes
sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Like the part where I realized, you know, that was kind of the order was when I then realized the connection between. So you guys are part vegetable, right? Not ethanol, I hope.
Right.
Because I first read the first part of the page, so then the whole like, oh, you know, and then like I didn't get like okay, so that's the reply from there. But the thing is, some of the confusion would have been gone for like the first top, for example, if they weren't split in the middle there.
Yeah.
Then at least the first 2 panels, because you know they're just one image anyways.
Yeah, but they were doing that earlier in the comic as well.
Yeah, but here I felt obviously they want to keep this like symmetry, which is, you know, like a key like theme in this like at least visually in this volume.
Yeah.
But in that case, because I think that's the kind of thing there, we having them talking and stuff, but then why would we then look at this close up of the train in the, you know, the beginning of the second row?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a continuation of the first panel, so we're kind of reading it as such anyways. But yeah, it just gets a bit confusing, all these things. But it's not like terrible, as you said. And again, you know, for the most part, except for like the top left corner, it keeps this kind of symmetrical look, because, you know, the whole like Woody exploding them, that's done, you know, again, very evenly there as well. You know, 6 panels in the second to last row.
Yep.
And then 4 panels below there, and it's just very nice.
Yeah, again, that's a good way of kind of concluding this issue. It was very nice. It was a very nice comic, and again, let's make a list. This is one of my favorite comics that we've read so far.
Yeah, sure. No, but it's great. I mean, you know, it'd be awful if it was a slog every time. It wasn't, you know, Eternal Warrior or Rye. So, you know, it's good to hear that, you know, you are enjoying them.
Well, I am, and I'm, as I said last episode, I'm getting really invested in in Valiant now, just as a company, as storytellers. I'm just excited to see what's coming up next.
So yeah, that's
and
great.
It's all your fault.
As per usual.
Yep.
So this one was the biggest push on it, though. So.
Mm-hmm.
All right then. So thanks for having a very big discussion about the art in the beginning.
Yeah.
And thanks for being here.
Of course.
That was the 43rd episode of Hardcast, detailing The Delinquents. For more content from me and Chris, follow us on Twitter at Humphrey_Aram and at Christian D. Claus. And now you can listen to our entire backlog of episodes on podbean.com/ValiantHardcast. Remember to like us on Facebook.com/ValiantHardcast for news and reactions related to Valiant. And you can also discuss this episode on our subreddit called Hardcast. Catch us later for our next episode discussing Unity Volume 4, The United.
And all those links are in the description.